Well, I'm happy to say that the mountain of parts for the aft fuselage build have all been primed, all the skins are primed, all the internal stuff. So now it's time to just start riveting bulkheads together, then move on from there to put the skins on and build the tail of the airplane. Here we go. So as I mentioned in the previous video, I kind of worked my way through match drilling and doing any necessary modifications on each bulkhead section up to the point where it was all supposed to get riveted together, and I'd stop at each one of those. So now just picking up from that, now that everything's been primed, I'll just start with the first bulkhead. We'll get that riveted together, and then we'll just progress our way through that. So I'll just start with the first bulkhead in the plans that we worked on, and that was the one that had the tail tie down attached on the bottom of that. So let's start riveting this together. I'm beginning with the smallest and most aft bulkhead, and then I'll work my way forward. So once I get all the parts of this bulkhead clecoed together, I can start to set the rivets. I begin with the rivets around the perimeter. These are -4 rivets, which are used just to connect the two halves that make up the bulkhead. To connect the tie-down bracket to the assembly, slightly longer -5 rivets are called for to get through all 3 parts. All right, well, first bulkhead's done. So let's do the rest of them. This next bulkhead has 2 long attach bars for the horizontal stabilizer. Next up, this bulkhead is comprised of several reinforcement doublers and also a couple of shorter attach bars for the horizontal stabilizer. 3 different rivet lengths are used to assemble this bulkhead, so it's important to identify which will be used where before riveting it all together. Next, I move on to the 1407 and 1408 bulkheads. These are the largest of the bulkheads in the tail, and will be the first ones which will be riveted to the bottom skin coming up. These are quickly riveted together as there are only a few rivets for each one. The smaller 1408 also has a bracket attached for the rudder cables, and also a couple of stiffener clips. So I've got almost all the bulkheads done. They're sitting over there. The last bulkhead that gets done is the one that incorporates the battery angles and the bell crank ribs. First step on that is putting all of these nut plates in there, so I'll go ahead and do that. Then we'll move on to assembling that whole bulkhead, and then we start putting skins on. So that's fun. Here I'm just riveting all of the nut plates to the battery angles as I mentioned. each of the bell crank ribs now gets a battery angle riveted to it.
Alright, so that's got the battery angle attached to the bell crank ribs. So the next step for the bulkhead is to attach a bunch of nut plates to the front of this, and then these get mated onto the back.
So first I Cleco all of the nut plates to the bulkhead. And then rivet them using the pneumatic squeezer. The nut plates in the middle of the bulkhead cannot be reached with a squeezer, so I break out the rivet gun and back rivet them.
Fire is still floating. She's gonna go boom. John, center that just in case it does go boom. We want to get maximum boomage. It is drifting on.
With that complete, I Cleco and then begin riveting the ribs to the bulkhead. While most of this assembly can be riveted using the rivet squeezer, the angle and reach for some of these require it doing the old-fashioned way, with a rivet gun and a bucking bar.
So that completes the assembly here on this final bulkhead. So now things start to get really fun. First step is to take this bulkhead and we'll attach this bulkhead to the bottom of that. And then once we do that, then we take everything over to the sawhorses and turn it all upside down and start attaching that to the bottom skin. So that is really going to start shaping out the skeleton of the tail of the airplane. So I'm feeling pretty excited about that. Just because, like I said, instead of just making a lot of airplane parts, now it looks like we're starting to really make an airplane. So let's get moving on that.
It's just 6 rivets which attach these two bulkheads to each other. So I set the larger 1407 bulkhead hanging off the table while I Cleco the two together and begin riveting. Once again, it's a combination of squeezing and bucking rivets to complete this assembly. Finally, at long last, it's time to start shaping out the tail. So I will Cleco the most forward 3 bulkheads, along with 3 stiffeners, to the bottom skin of the tail.
Well, this is pretty exciting. Yeah, so this is the bottom of the tail. A couple other bulkheads to go in the back. At this stage, I've got these all Clecoed together, so the next step is to rivet these bulkheads in place before I then add some side skins and some extra bulkheads on the way back. So really at an exciting part of this for me, because like I said, it's turning into an airplane. The problem is I have to stop today. It's getting kind of late in the day and I've got to go to work tomorrow. So, yeah, I'll have to cut it off here and then I'll pick it back up when I get back in a few days. But I like it. It's coming along nice.